This is I was like avant-garde. I don't even know what genre this technically is. The textures are amazing. Like I love the guitars and the whole intro bit. So cool. Yeah, drums sound huge. I love the kick drum. Just like ginormous.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about what went into that record.
So very interesting project because we worked via distance the whole way through. They're based in York and Hull, I believe. And they sent me a demo, and I think the demo was like maybe 7 or 8 minutes long. I don't know how long the track is now, but I don't think it's as long as it was when it was sent to me initially.
It's 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 56 seconds.
All right. So we trimmed it down. So we started with the demo, and some of the sounds were already kind of there. Kieran and Dom were working, I think, at Melrose Yard or Melrose Studio in York, if I'm remembering the right name. So they were they had some of their guitar tones down, and what I was working with them was to fine tune the structure of the song, because it was really long and it didn't really have a fully formed structure yet. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth with Kieran, and what we would do is we had this SoundCloud link where we would put the revisions, and I would put the revisions on the timeline on the marker of the song, and I would nudge him in the different directions. I gave him a bunch of homework of different vocalists and stuff to listen to. So I was trying to push his performance as they were going, because we were constantly updating this demo into a more concrete song structure. It has a very unique structure, does this song.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we were fine honing that, and then we did go through some periods where we talked about the piano sound that's in there, and I offered to do some of the MIDI, but I think in the end, Kieran was able to take care of it, and we also had a point I remember in the production where I kind of sent them like a little note, and I said, "Hey guys, like it seems like maybe the drums were recorded in 2 different places." And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, no, like we're not doing that. Can you go back?" So there was a lot of like me asking them to retrack stuff. So it was a very, very unique project, because I don't usually work that way. I'm usually there, but instead I was sort of like their revisionist co-producer, because they were doing, different bits and pieces. And I was trying to get them structurally in one place in terms of their song, stylistically in one place in terms of their performance and instrumentation and choices, and then of course technically in terms of where they're recording, because I didn't have any control over like how they were going to do that. And so then they had me suggest mix engineers, and they already had their mastering engineer in mind. So I gave them a list that I thought of mix engineers that would be appropriate for the style, and they picked one off the list. And then so it was a strange project.
Almost like a consultant.
Yeah. So co-producer in that one, or more like an executive, maybe producer. I don't know. That's a weird term also now in music, because I think people imagine budgets. Yeah. So it was a lot. It was a lot of guiding, because I spent a lot of time working with Kieran on his takes and his stylizing of that and how he was performing things. I remember giving him like a list of artists to go listen to, and spend time practicing certain parts of the songs as though he were that artist, to kind of push his performance in a little different direction.
So how did they actually find you and decide that they want to work with you, like overseas, remotely, like, consulting them, coaching them their way through this record? Like, what was that decision process like? And I'm just curious.
I think Dom, he's their drummer, had reached out to me and said like, "We want to work with you." And I was like, overjoyed. And I'd heard the stuff that they'd done before, and they sent me a bunch of demos, but I didn't know, if we'd be doing like a record or a song. And in the end, it came down to like a song. And I said, so what do you want me to do for you? And they were like, well, just do your thing. And I was like, well, from over here, so there was a bit of back and forth for a minute because I was like, not really sure what they wanted me to do for them, on, with their track. So I wasn't, and then I had to ask them, have you worked with a producer before, and those kinds of things, because I was trying to really tease out what they needed from me. And in the end, it seemed like what they really needed was to figure out how to get this song down from 7 or 8 minutes. And I don't want to say tame it, because it's still wild. It's a very wild, good song. But I think just rein it in so that the structures gave it the flow, and so that the performance, was going to match the style that they had in mind and vision. And they have a very specific style. You could hear from their previous work with the Jonathan Fryer or Michael Fryer. Ooh, I'm bad with names. But yeah, their previous producer had, they had a pretty specific style with that. So I was not sure if they were trying to take it in a new direction or if they wanted to keep consistent with that. So we just went through that at the beginning of this kind of dance of like, well, what do you need? What would you like me to do for you, from over here? I would have loved to have been there, in person, because then that would have been a completely different process. And it's crazy because we did this before the pandemic, but it was like 2019,
Right. Yeah.
So, or it was like
the SoundCloud comments is hilarious. I'm using a program called FilePass now, which I don't know if you heard of it. It's like they're a sponsor of the show now.
Oh, cool.
And they basically it's like timestamp revisions.
Yes.
Just like they have on SoundCloud, and it's made mixing like so much easier for me because I get like okay, at 2 minutes raise the snare drum. At like 3 minutes, like, can you tune that word that just somehow got lost or whatever? It's just like so easy to just like rein in every single spot in the song.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of working like that in the initial stages, but it's such a unique process because I've never worked with any other band that way. So again, every project I've done has been completely different. Like I think the Natalie Michelle single, I did like way more arranging on that than I've done on like some other projects, and that was all in person. But then on something like this, I'm like doing it by distance, and it's not necessarily arrangement, but just I guess true like really stripped down producer guiding and coaching the song. I don't even know how you would term that. But
producer is like the hardest term to define, right? Like
right now
in music,
it is,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right now it is.
Yeah.
I know you kind of, I don't know if I mentioned this already on the podcast, but like in your book, you kind of say it's really hard to define it. What would you say is your definition of a producer these days?
Well, there's my definition of what I do as a producer. And I would say in general, what I think a tried and true producer is someone who works on the technical and creative aspects of a record that they are producing somebody else. So I don't think you're a producer necessarily if you only do your own music. I think at that point you are a self-producing artist, and it's a big distinction. It's very different. That doesn't mean you don't know how to produce, because you're producing yourself, but you're not a producer. And I think it's weird because people have this other term, music producer. And I really realized this recently. So I'm not a music producer because that's someone that makes music. I'm a record producer. So I'm trying to just make that distinction. And it's a weird thing because I think now most people are like, they call themselves a music producer if they just make music. Anyone that makes music with a computer is now a music producer. But I don't think, so that's confusing because previously that would have just been somebody being an artist, right? It's just that our tools have changed, but we've applied a different hat to the tools. And I don't think that necessarily makes sense. Like people who had 8 tracks were not calling themselves producers. They just knew that they had elements of production at home, that they were, doing
Right.
some steps of the production process. And so
Right.
now everyone's everything. And I think that's a little confusing. So I would say a producer is somebody who, you're guiding the production process from pre-production to post-production, but you may not be the mastering engineer or the mix engineer. That's post-production, right? So you're overseeing the entire project, and that may involve technical decisions, doing some of the engineering, doing some of the recording engineering, and as well as having a say in guiding how the overall product is going to come out in terms of like making sure that it gets done and it has the right team, and to help the artists with all of these choices so that they can just be artists. They can perform their best and write their best, and carry their creative vision. You're there to facilitate their vision of their creative output. You're a facilitator of the technical into the creative. So, but I don't know. Some people DJ and
love it.
Say they're producers too. So I'm so confused these days.
Yeah. I think I almost feel like the most as a producer when I'm like liaisoning between the artist and the mastering engineer, because I feel like that's like when I like really feel like, oh, I'm actually in charge of like making sure this record is finished, because I'm like I tell the mastering engineer you did a good job, or maybe let's try another pass at it, and I tell the artist, hey, this is the master, what do you guys think? And so it's like, I feel like that's like when I feel like I actually even though I'm there from the creation of the music and there, building the track, recording the vocals, mixing, like that's when I feel like, oh, like I'm actually the person that's saying, okay, this is good. Will the artist say now it's good? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel like that's like the moment.
Yeah. I just think modern songwriting has changed. So I think if you're a modern songwriter, you have all the elements of production in your home. I think that's an important distinction. Like a modern songwriter has the elements of production in their home and doesn't necessarily make them a producer. And I know that like makes people angry, but that's just my opinion. I also think like the analogy that I find for this is, for a minute, and I don't know if this term is still used, when I was becoming a composer, which I still feel weird about saying I am one, because I come from a mindset, I know that I don't have the chops the way the real composers, I'm using air quotes because I keep forgetting there's no video, the real composers would do. So when I was in university, they called people like myself workstation-based composers. And I was like, aha, that typifies really, I'm a composer that uses a workstation. I use a DAW to compose. And so it's different. I'm not sitting in front of an orchestra. I'm not sitting at a piano with manuscript paper, writing it out. I'm a workstation-based composer. And for a minute, that was a term that people used. And I think it really explained that I was not the one thing, but I was the other thing. And I just think we just need to get better about our vocabulary, about how we talk about this stuff, and stop being a little bit blasé about, because it makes it really hard to sell yourself if you don't know, if nobody's on the same page with what terms mean what. It's really confusing.
Right. So you need to be on good terms you need to be able to tell the artist that you're pitching yourself to, this is what I do. This is what I bring to the table. Even if the term is, blasé, you still have to pitch it as succinct and definitive. So it's like, okay, I help you realize your song. I mean, I'm speaking for myself here, right? Like, so, I help you realize your song and get it to sound as good as it can within, a direction that you like and you think is good, and finishing it and making it